Let's talk about Robin Hood, the legendary outlaw you think you know. He's famous for robbing the rich, giving to the poor, and outsmarting the Sheriff of Nottingham. But legends grow and change, just like that fish story your uncle tells. Each retelling gets bigger. The Robin Hood of movies is charming and heroic, but the original tales are much grittier. Medieval England was harsh, with a huge gap between rich and poor. Perfect fuel for a hero's legend. Was Robin a nobleman, a commoner, or just a story? The truth is a messy mix of all three. His story is a patchwork of ballads and whispers evolving over centuries. Let's dig into the real history behind the myth and see why Robin Hood still matters. To truly understand Robin Hood, you have to step back in time and imagine life in medieval England. Forget about modern comforts. No electricity, no running water, and certainly no supermarkets. Life was a daily struggle, and for most people, survival was the only goal. The vast majority of people were peasants, bound to the land from birth. They toiled from sunrise to sunset, planting and harvesting crops, tending animals, and doing whatever their lord demanded. In return, they received just enough to keep going. Barely enough food, a simple hut, and little hope for a better life. The feudal system was like a giant pyramid scheme, with the king at the very top, powerful lords and nobles beneath him, and peasants at the very bottom. The peasants carried the weight of the entire system, crushed by endless taxes and obligations. Everything was taxed: grain, livestock, even the right to get married or inherit land. If you died, your family had to pay a tax just to bury you. The tax collectors were relentless, and falling behind could mean losing what little you had. Justice was a privilege for the wealthy. If you were poor, the law was rarely on your side. Nobles and officials could bend the rules, while peasants had almost no way to defend themselves or seek fairness. Even the forests, which might seem like a refuge, were off limits. Places like Sherwood Forest were reserved for the king and his noble friends to hunt. Ordinary people were forbidden to gather wood or hunt animals there. Poaching a deer, or even collecting firewood could mean harsh punishment, sometimes even death. But for families facing hunger, the risk was often worth it. The forest became a symbol of both danger and hope. The laws were harsh and unforgiving. Executions and public punishments were common, meant to keep the poor in line and protect the interests of the powerful. In this world, inequality was everywhere, and the threat of violence was always present. Imagine working yourself to exhaustion, only to have the sheriff or his men show up and take away your harvest. Meanwhile, the nobles feasted in their great halls, enjoying luxuries you could only dream of, and hunted for sport while you struggled to feed your family. Frustration, anger, and a sense of powerlessness filled the air. For many, it seemed like there was no escape from this cycle of hardship and injustice. But even in the darkest times, people dreamed of change. They whispered stories of someone brave enough to stand up to the system, someone who could fight back against the unfairness and give hope to the oppressed. Enter Robin Hood, a legendary outlaw who broke the king's rules, stole from the rich, and gave to the poor. He became a symbol of resistance, a hero who dared to challenge the powerful and inspire the powerless. The legend of Robin Hood was born from this desperate need for justice and hope. His story spread from village to village, passed down by storytellers and sung in ballads, growing with each telling. That's why Robin Hood's story struck such a powerful chord. In a world of injustice, he represented the dream that one person could make a difference, and that hope could survive, even in the harshest times. Robin Hood's job? Rob the rich, give to the poor. He and his merry men ambushed corrupt nobles and the sheriff's men in Sherwood Forest. Robin's style was legendary, sometimes inviting victims to a feast before relieving them of their gold. Honesty was rewarded, lies were punished. The stolen wealth went to struggling peasants, not personal gain. The Sheriff of Nottingham was Robin's main foe, greedy, cruel, and always outsmarted. Their rivalry was about more than money. It was about justice versus corruption. Robin wasn't just a thief. He was a rebel with a cause. He challenged a broken system and inspired hope. He showed that you could fight back against injustice. That's why he became a hero for the ages. Robin did what others only dreamed of. He made the impossible seem possible. The legend of Robin Hood is inseparable from the band of companions who stood by his side, the Merry Men. These weren't just followers, they were a chosen family, each with their own story, strengths, and reasons for joining Robin's cause. In the heart of Sherwood Forest, they became more than outlaws. They became symbols of hope for the oppressed. The merry men were outcasts from society, but together, they found belonging. Each member brought something unique to the table, whether it was strength, wit, or a sense of humor. United by loyalty and a shared dream of justice, they risked everything to stand up to tyranny. Take Little John, for example. Despite his name, he was a giant of a man, both in stature and in heart. His legendary quarterstaff duel with Robbin didn't just earn him respect, it forged a lifelong friendship. As Robbin's right-hand man, Little John's loyalty and strength were unmatched. Then there's Friar Tuck, the jolly yet formidable friar. He was more than just comic relief, he was the group's spiritual anchor, reminding them of the difference between true faith and corrupt authority. Tuck's wisdom and humor kept spirits high, even in the darkest times. Through Tuck, Robbin's fight was shown to be against injustice and greed, not religion itself. He helped the merry men remember their higher purpose, and his compassion extended to all who needed help. Maid Marian, a later but essential addition, shattered expectations. Far from a damsel in distress, Marian was Robbin's equal, brave, clever, and skilled with a bow. She often outwitted the sheriff's men and inspired the merry men with her courage. Marian brought romance to the legend, but more importantly, she proved that the fight for justice was for everyone, regardless of gender. Her leadership and compassion made her a vital part of the group's success. Together, these outlaws formed a found family, living by their own code in the wilds of Sherwood. They shared laughter, hardship, and hope, creating a community where everyone had a place. Their bond was built on trust, courage, and a shared vision of a fairer world. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they fought for every villager who suffered under unjust rule. The merry men's skills and unity made Robbin's rebellion possible. Their daring raids and clever tricks became legendary, inspiring hope far beyond Sherwood. They were never just sidekicks, they were the heart and soul of the legend, each one essential to Robbin's story. Without the merry men and woman, Robin Hood would not be the hero we remember today. Their courage, loyalty, and friendship turned a lone outlaw into a legend that still inspires us centuries later. Robin Hood's story began not in books or on screens, but as lively ballads sung by wandering minstrels in bustling medieval marketplaces. These songs, passed from town to town, were the social media of their day, spreading tales of daring deeds and rebellion to anyone who would listen. In these early days, Robin Hood was a figure shaped by the voices of the people, his legend growing with every retelling. The earliest tales painted him as a tough, sometimes violent outlaw, living on the edge of society and fighting for survival in the dense green forests. He was a symbol of resistance, a man who stood up to corrupt authority, even if it meant breaking the law. Over time, as the stories were retold and reimagined, writers began to polish his image. Robin Hood transformed from a rough outlaw into a nobleman in disguise, a champion of the poor, stealing from the rich to give to those in need. This new version of Robin became a symbol of hope and justice. The invention of the printing press changed everything. Suddenly, Robin Hood's adventures could be collected and shared far and wide. Books like A Jest of Robin Hood gathered his exploits, making his legend accessible to people who had never heard the old ballads. In the 1800s, authors such as Sir Walter Scott and Howard Pyle took up the tale, adding new layers to Robin's character. They made him not just a hero, but a romantic figure, brave, clever, and always fighting for what's right. Their stories set the stage for the Robin Hood we know today. When Hollywood discovered Robin Hood in the 20th century, the legend exploded onto the big screen. Errol Flynn's swashbuckling performance in the 1938 classic defined the role for generations, turning Robin into a global icon of adventure and rebellion. Since then, Robin's story has been retold in every imaginable style, from Disney's clever animated Fox to gritty modern reboots. Each new adaptation brings something fresh, reflecting the hopes and fears of its own era. No matter the version, each retelling updates the legend for a new generation, keeping Robin Hood relevant and alive. Audiences around the world continue to be inspired by his fight for justice and his refusal to back down. Robin Hood's story is endlessly adaptable, morphing to fit the times while holding on to its core values of courage, fairness, and hope. That's why, centuries after those first ballads echoed through medieval streets, Robin Hood remains a star, his legend as alive and powerful as ever. Was Robin Hood real? The honest answer, we don't know. No solid evidence proves he existed, no records, no grave, just stories. The name Robin Hood pops up in medieval court records as a generic outlaw alias. The legend likely blends the deeds of many rebels and fugitives. Some historians point to possible candidates, but the trail always goes cold. What matters is the idea Robin Hood represents. He gave voice to ordinary people's frustrations and hopes. Whether real or not, his legend became a symbol of justice. Why does Robin Hood still matter in our modern world? Because his story is about fighting injustice, a theme that never gets old. We still see unfair systems and root for the underdog. Robin Hood is a symbol of rebellion, hope, and the power of community. He reminds us that courage and compassion can change the world. His team shows we're stronger together. His legend teaches us to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Robin Hood is more than a man. He's an idea. He's the voice that says that's not right, and inspires us to act. The fight for justice continues, and the world still needs heroes like Robin Hood.